on, let's go, boy!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another 3BG review. This time we are going to be talking about Thunderbolts. Surprisingly, as DJ Sue said, back to basics.
Yeah, I kept it at, and I still stand by that statement. This movie was most definitely a back to basics Marvel film. Some would call it a filler movie. I would call it back to basics because after all of the stumbles, if you will, of Marvel's recent movies in the last 5 to 6 years, this was pretty solid.
Yeah. All right. So I figured this is a good platform to kind of go into it with this. So for those that aren't familiar with the Thunderbolts as a concept, essentially they were a group of supervillains that were formed under Baron Zemo, who was pretty much trying to expand his international sort of crime presence and such. And he used the Thunderbolts as a way to do it by virtue of masquerading as a team of heroes, essentially, in order to kind of like put the Avengers in a sense of a lull, and then he can pretty much just strike and stuff. Because if I remember correctly at that time, I want to say this is coming off of the whole Onslaught thing, and you might remember it vaguely.
Yeah, I do.
Where we had the Heroes Reborn shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so while Iron Man and Captain America and the Fantastic Four were in the Heroes Reborn universe, there was a sort of void missing in the mainline Marvel universe where the Avengers were kind of just there, but they weren't really the team. So Thunderbolts filled that void. Long story short, the people that Zemo had under him as villains that masqueraded themselves as heroes, they saw themselves, they kind of had an appreciation of, oh man, we're actually beloved as heroes. We actually like doing this hero stuff. And Zemo wasn't having it. They turned on Zemo. And pretty much any incarnation after that has always had a different thing. I think this movie leans more towards the Hawkeye incarnation of Thunderbolts, where it's a group of mercenaries who pretty much come together to kind of sort of figure themselves out of where they need to be doing in life, essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely a team of just mercenaries, and in a weird way, considering that what is it? This is what Earth 616.
Yeah, the MCU 616 in a way.
This is MCU 616, and considering that Deadpool does exist in that world, thanks to the Deadpool Wolverine movie.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to apply to be one of the Avengers, and of course he got rejected. From watching this movie, I said, he would fit right in with everybody in the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, he was in a different incarnation of the Thunderbolts down the line.
I believe he was, and I'm like, he would so fit in this role. But given that storyline that you just laid out of it being they were Zemo's team, I said to myself, you know what? Had they had done this idea probably years prior to what led up to Captain America Civil War, we probably would have got that in the Civil War movie.
Yeah, I mean, given the storyline, yeah, but it's like a lot of people going into this film, I would say probably since day one when they announced it at San Diego, and we were there when that happened. And
then, I was there for it.
And then, them showing who the characters are going to be, including Sentry. That's nothing. It's not spoiler. They announced that, it was supposed to be Steven Yeun, but he had some schedule conflicts because they delayed. This movie was one of
this movie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this movie was one of many movies on top of Brave New World that kind of got delayed by a year, and that kind of messed up his scheduling, so they had to recast someone else. But like when you look at those characters on the front end, it was understandable why people were very trepidatious, because it's like the Thunderbolts always had a diverse mix of power sets of the team. And then when you look at this team, it's like, okay, it's a bunch of super soldiers and a widow and Ghost. So that's not really a diverse mix of people except for their personalities.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes the movie, and especially with them saying that supposedly the Sentry's there, so now you're like, well, you have a guy that's uber powerful, and then you got everybody else. How the hell is this going to work? Understandable. And the trailers, to their credit, don't give you much to work with, and that's a good thing, because it's not trying to tell you everything up front.
And the way that to answer your question, the way that they did it made sense. I'm gonna say that. I'm just gonna I'll leave it at that.
It's
It
literally
made sense how they did it.
This movie is, and now I would say thankful for the writers, directors, and probably credit Marvel Studios. The movie is opposite of what you might think it is when you walk into it, and that's a good thing, because if they went, and I told Sue this when we left, the typical 3-act structure in tentpole films,
especially during phase 1 through 3.
Well, I'm just talking like action movies, just movies.
Oh yeah, or
big
action
tempo,
movies in general.
Yeah, big tempo movies in general. They all follow a sort of 3-act structure where you have a lot of action beats, and your third act is this big whiz bang action, craziness, right? This movie doesn't do that. Like, the 3-act structure is very different, and this movie is telling you up front, oh, this is sort of like a character focused movie. And if you know anything about Sentry, that's the smartest play that you can do for that. And I think this is going to be the thing that's going to, your miles are going to vary depending on what your expectation is for Thunderbolts. But it's a good movie overall. Like I liked it better than Brave New World.
Yeah,
it was more cohesive than Brave New World, especially for the story it was telling.
I said the same thing about the fact that I enjoyed this movie more than Brave New World. Brave New World to me just felt like and you can fight me on this. Brave New World just felt like it was 3 plots in one movie.
No, it was. And like I said, it was 3 plots that they were trying to gel together. And it's not the first movie to do this, because there are plenty of movies that try to juggle multiple plots and try to gel them together. And it's like Brave New World, it limped to the finish line for the plot they was trying to do. It was like, it was serviceable, but like, you could have eliminated one of those plot points to really make it more cohesive, like what Thunderbolts did. Thunderbolts told you what the story was up front, what's happening, what's the driving narrative, and that's it. There was no outside, like, oh, we got another subplot in here, and it's like, no, this is the story.
No, that's but where I was going with this was where that one felt like they tried to jam 3 plots into one film, as if somebody lost a bet at Marvel Studios or something. But you don't see that with Thunderbolts. I never really, I never really delved too deep into the Thunderbolts comics or anything like that. That's more your avenue.
Yeah.
But from what I was able to gather from just going off of this as a MCU film watcher, I'm familiar with all the characters because I've seen them in the previous media that they were in.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing Yelena come back because I love Florence Pugh, and I was happy to see
Red Guardian.
Yeah, I was happy to see Red Guardian. I was happy to see Bucky. I was like, for a lot of these characters, we have not seen these guys for quite some time, and to see them in a movie, like in a new movie, I'm like, this was a nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah, so all these characters we've seen in certain movies. We've seen Taskmaster and Yelena in Black Widow. Yelena popped up in Hawkeye in like the third part of the show, ending the season. Bucky, we saw a little bit in Brave New World and Falcon Winter Soldier. He's been pretty much kind of trying to find purpose, and his purpose has basically be a junior politician on Washington, D.C., basically. Red Guardian has been out here as a limo driver, also trying to find purpose, because
Guardian literally being comic relief.
Yeah, in a good way that works. Like it basically picks up from Black Widow, because he was funny as shit in Black Widow. And then you have U.S. Agent John Walker pretty much picking up from Falcon Winter Soldier, working for what's his face, Valentina. And then you have Ghost, character from Ant-Man and the Wasp, where we've seen, she's also been kind of doing her mercenary thing because she's been on the run since the end of that movie.
I was gonna say, dude, when I saw Ghost, I was like, bruh, Ghost, I ain't seen you in a minute. How you been?
Yeah, but the movie does a great job of kind of telling you what's been happening with these folks.
Yeah.
And just a very quick, here's what happened to Ghost. Here's what happened to Walker. Here's what happened to Red Guardian. Okay, that's all you need to know. Let's keep going. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything deeper than that. And it all comes together. A lot of people are comparing this to Suicide Squad, which it's the opposite of what Suicide Squad.
Yes, I mean, and you know what? It also
it's very low hanging fruit when people say that
also,
too.
It really also depends on which Suicide Squad are you comparing this to. Like, are you comparing this to James Gunn's Suicide Squad? Or are you comparing it to the one that came before?
It's neither, personally.
No, I know for both of us, it's neither. But I want to know, what are people like really comparing this to?
I think I've seen a lot of people say Gunn.
Okay,
because of the banter, which makes sense.
People referring it to Guns. Fine. You want to compare one set of misfit superheroes versus another set of misfit superheroes.
It's the most low-hanging fruit ever, because it's like, if you know comics, Thunderbolts is more Secret Six than anything. Secret Six was a DC Comics group of, once again, mercenaries.
Yeah, just mercenaries
who just happened to come together because they all kind of had the same goal, and they just reluctant and be like, all right, I guess we got to work together for this one mission, and then we're going to fuck off afterwards and stuff.
I've always looked at like a group of mercenary superheroes as like the middle child in the superhero hierarchy, because you got the street level hero characters, which is your Netflix and D+ show characters. And then you got Avengers level threats, since that's where we categorize these characters. And then you have the middle, which is everybody else. Everybody that's got just good enough superpowers to do something, but you're not going to see them try to go toe to toe with a Thanos or a literal god.
Like, they serve a purpose for whatever narrative that you need in the moment. I think that's probably what initially threw people off about the team when they announced like that team at San Diego. They were like, what? Really?
Yeah, when I heard that and I saw what this is going to be, I'm like, okay, so a lot of y'all are just going to be Batman in the back with the sniper rifle. Got it.
And that's why I said from the outset, like, initially you kind of look at that and I'm like, what movie are you doing? Because like, if like you look at the makeup, it doesn't give off anything dynamic. But that's what I say. I credit the director, Jake Schreier, and the screenplay writers, because they did that Netflix show Beef. I don't know if you watched it, but like,
I watched Beef. I love that.
Yeah, every bit of how they write that show oozes in this movie, and you can tell they were like, all right, if we're gonna do this, we got to focus on the characters and make people give a shit. And again, by the time you get to the end of the movie, you care about all these characters. You're literally gonna be like, oh shit, I actually like Red Guardian. Damn, I actually like US Agent way more than what I did in Falcon Winter Soldier.
And speaking of which, because I've already, as much as I try to stay away from social media, anytime we got movies, to screen coming up, I did hear this one thing. I kept hearing it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really owe US Agent an apology?
Not really, because
that's what I was saying.
Because just like anything else, it's like you can empathize with someone and still be like, yo, fuck you.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
And that's what this movie did too. To its credit, it was like, yeah, sure, I could feel bad for whatever his situation is, but
like, look, I'm not saying, like, listen, I'm not saying we're gonna be friends, but I understand where you're at in life.
And that's what makes it so funny, because it's like, from the outset, I love that John Walker's character continues from Falcon Winter Soldier, where he feels he's the most important guy in the room.
Yep.
Even though we all know it's like, bro, no, you're not Captain America. You can try it. No, you're not. Just be who you are, dog. Like, and that's what, again, all these character story arcs from beginning to end, is great to see them evolve, because you see all of them learn something about themselves and accept who they are. Like, even like, and I think it works because you have Bucky, who already has went through the work in Falcon Winter Soldier of accepting who he is.
I mean, he has several, not only has he had that show, but he's also had a number of movies to go along with it too.
Yeah, so when you have those movies and he's already done the work, he fits right in with this group to help out Yelena and her figuring out her purpose. Because it's like, hey, look, I had to take a long time. I know who I am. Do you know who you are? And that's really what this movie is about. It's about these group of people who are depressed and trying to figure their shit out, while also kind of bumping heads against Valentina, which, by the way, Julie Louis-Dreyfus is like great.
Oh, I loved her.
She's every bit of, it's like, if you remember Wakanda Forever, her being in that movie, it's like take that, but now she's actually able to really like spread her wings in this movie in a way that she couldn't really do much in Wakanda Forever because she wasn't really supposed to be the important part of that movie anyway.
Right. And what I loved about her character, especially in this movie, is from what we were watching, I'm looking at her and I'm like, again, I try not to relate what's happening in the real world with, you know, with the jokes that they throw out in these movies, but I could not help for the Valentina when she was in that courtroom and the things that she was saying, I was like, oh my God, you are emulating this current administration. Certain people, but it's like certain people in this administration, you are like saying word for word stuff that they would say.
But that's what makes it so funny is because like, and I think it wasn't, I think it's just happenstance, right? Kind of like Falcon went, just like on Brave New World, where it's like the allegories between Sam button heads with Thunderbolt Ross kind of echoed how people butt heads against Donald Trump, right? Yep. And granted, that's something that happens in the Marvel Universe comics, but like you said, you can't help but see those sort of like parallels to the real world, you know. And like I said, I think that
the writers know what they're doing.
Yeah, and that to be honest, that I mean, you heard it before, like how Marvel comics always is kind of like the world outside your window, like it echoes the real world in some way, shape, or form all the time. So this isn't like the newest thing ever. That's what makes people that sit there and say leave politics out my comics. I'm like, bro, like Captain America butted heads with fucking Tricky Dick. Like, what are we talking about here? Like
he punched Hitler in the mouth.
He punched Hitler in the mouth, man. Like, what are we doing here? Like
everything's
that's the highest selling comic ever. That's worth that comic is worth millions of dollars, but you're gonna tell me like keep politics out of comics. Come on, bro. That shit's worth $1 million.
This is the kind of politics I'm cool with.
Yeah, so it's like politics has always been in comics, especially if you a Captain America or Captain America adjacent character. Like U.S. Agent John Walker is a good example of that, because it was like his character, real quick. At one point, when Steve ditched the, you know, he went nomad. Instead of being Captain America, John Walker took his place. And John Walker has always historically been a very conservative character.
He's a conservative Captain America.
Yeah, he's conservative Captain America.
He is the antithesis of Captain America.
Yeah,
he represents everything that Captain doesn't.
Yeah, so it's like when people say that, it's like, well, do you know John Walker's conservative, right? And you see a little bit of that in Falcon Winter Soldier with him to a degree, where it's like when you tell Sam, well, hey, you know, I need my sidekick, and Sam was like, and there it is. Like, I ain't gonna say it's racism, but yeah, there it is, racism right there, buddy.
The schism is schism.
Yo, Sam had that smirk that every black person does when they see bullshit. It's like, there it is right there.
It was the Booker T. Hogan situation.
Yeah, it's like, come on, bro. So it's like, I love
in the background looking at him like, yeah, we see it.
And that's what I love about him in this movie is that, like, the people giving him shit, and you know, that segment of people online are going to probably feel some way about it, but like the women in this movie that take the piss out of John Walker, it's right. It's understandable why they are, because it's like, the dude's a fucking asshole. Like, the fuck? Like, of course they're going to take the piss out of him for it.
You literally had the male character say it first.
Thank you. That's what makes it funny, because it's like, no, this makes sense. If somebody's an asshole in your ranks, you're going to fucking poke fun at him, because it's like, come on, stop. Like, we're helping you to not be an asshole. Just stop doing it.
And I'm ready for them to say like, oh, they treated John Walker like he was a complete idiot. Did you watch a single episode of Falcon Winter Soldier?
There's a moment in a movie where even Bucky looked at John.
Have you read a comic before?
Not even that. Fuck that. There's a moment in this movie where even Bucky's looking at John like, hey, John, how's it going? Like, so you still just being that guy, huh? Like, what are we doing here?
Like, all these years in a pandemic, you ain't learned nothing, huh?
Didn't learn nothing, huh? Just
cool.
You know, and I think that's, and when you add in the special ingredient of David Harbour as Red Guardian, it's like, yes, because like you said, he's the comedy relief, but his comedy relief is like, he's like the sort of bumbling comedy relief, but like in the, you understand why he's the bumbling comedy relief.
I mean, when you're trying to, and let's be real, he's the glue of the whole team.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he was the first person to call this team a team before the team even
Because
acknowledged
he's
it.
like a little kid. It's like, yes, we're all together. This is great. And it's like, yeah, I echo his sentiments because it's like,
I mean, the last time he actually had a team was his,
Cold War.
like not even Cold War, was him, Natasha, Yelena,
Mhm.
like the whole family basically.
His fake wife, like that
Yeah, his
was.
fake wife and all that. I'm like,
He was
bro,
happy. He was like, "Hey, I get to suit up again. This is great." And
yeah,
that's why I love about him, because he's a person that he knows he was clearly Russian propaganda, right? He was
yes, he
there,
was.
Captain America, but like and this is not a spoiler and stuff, because he even said a little bit of that in Black Widow. It was like he felt his most proudest being the
Like
face of
serving his
Russia,
country.
serving his country, because everybody loved him. He saved people and all that stuff. And that's what makes him in this movie so great, is that like he misses that shit.
Oh yeah, it's the it's the paid in full argument of I could leave the game, I could leave the league, but the question is, if I do, will the fans still love me?
And that's why he's a limo driver in this movie, because it's like that interaction with people he misses. You know, and like I said, that's what makes it so great. And that's, like you said, he's the glue that's trying to tell everybody, hey guys, we can be good, we can be heroes, we can do this. And everybody's looking at him like, come on, bro. Like, I'm just trying to go home. Like, what are we doing here?
In fact, just to segue real quick, Yelena. When Yelena said something very early on in the movie that told me everything I needed to know about the movie, which is, wait a minute, none of us can do that. All of us, the only thing we know how to do is just punch and shoot.
I love the self, because look, I'm one of those people that I kind of roll my eyes when people like, people, I roll my eyes when people are like, oh, I love when movies self-aware. I'm like, yeah, but like, there's a way to do it to where it's not like you're not jerking yourself off on, see guys, we're self-aware. It's like, do it in a way that the characters are like, hold on. There's a little bit of a power disparity here. What's going on?
Right. I mean, self-awareness in joke form is one thing, but then you got blatant self-awareness where they're doing everything all but turning and winking at the camera.
Yeah, and her self-awareness, the movie is self-aware to a point, but when the way they do it is just very much like, no, hold on, let's take a step back for a second. What are we doing here?
Yeah, let's try to figure this out. It's like, at the end of the day, we are all technically still human with weaknesses.
Yeah, and that's what goes into, lastly, like Bob. Like, his story, he's the wild card in this movie, and it goes to what I said at the beginning with like how they structured this movie. They could have definitely went very prototypical with him.
They could have,
but they went opposite, and they made him a very multi-layered character that has a measure of mystery that the movie kind of unpacks.
By far the most, I would say probably the most character development in the whole movie.
Yeah, because you had to, especially like if you know the history of Sentry in the comics, you had to do that. You had to. There's no other way to do that character. You had to expand and do a lot of character development for him, because if you just made him just a punching bag and stuff of like a villain, or even just a character period,
or you make him come off as Ozymandias from Watchmen.
Yeah, where it's like, am I supposed to care about this character? That kind of thing. It could have easily been that way, but it was the opposite, where you're like, okay, I actually like this character. Okay, cool.
He was great. I mean, come on, the fact when he first introduced himself as Bob, and the way that we've seen this in movies before, where every time you get a Bob character, like the most plain vanilla name for a character, and they come off as endearing in the beginning, you already won as a character.
Yeah,
the audience is already like, I already liked him. I liked him when he showed up. I was like, I'm gonna like you.
Yeah,
like this guy.
and this is another thing too. Besides this not being like Suicide Squad, it being just a sort of filler movie, I never felt it was a filler movie personally, because one of the things that a lot of people have said, and especially post-Endgame critiques about these Marvel Studios projects, is that they always felt like setup films. I felt Multiverse of Madness bucked that trend, because it definitely felt like standalone and it's in its own little thing.
It did, but you already know it's connecting something.
Yeah, but everybody's point of contention has always been, oh, these movies just feel like setup. They can't be standalone. So when you watch Thunderbolts, it's like, no, this feels very much like this is their story. It's not trying to connect to anything on purpose. And when it does connect certain things, it's a very natural thing. Because stuff from Brave New World does tie into this movie with respect to Valentina, especially with what she does in the government space.
Right.
Makes perfect sense. Because that's been the point of contention since Endgame. Where the fuck are the Avengers at?
That's what everybody's been asking. Like, where are the Avengers? Everybody forgot who
Sam and Brave New World. They're like, yo,
you got Sam, and you're still asking where are the Avengers.
Whoa, Ross wanted him to be at the forefront of a government push of Avengers coming back, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, but still, like we don't have Iron Man. We don't have
like
nobody knows where Thor is, and no one knows where Hulk is. You know, Avengers are gone, and and just having Sam, it's, you know, in the eyes of a lot of people, it's just not enough. They're like, yo, the Avengers are gone, and where are they? Like, who do we have? Like, is anybody going to be around to come and save the world? Like what is happening here? And when you get these these setup movies, these filler movies or whatever, you have characters that again have these sort of standalone-ish stories, but it's like, hey, we're just showing you something that's happening a little bit later. Like, here's something that's taking place, after the movie's over. Like, here's what they've been doing for like the past, I don't know, 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a connection. Boom.
Yeah, and this one,
they don't throw it all over your face in like throughout this whole movie. They really
it's just like I said, that they still keep the focus on their main story with these characters. Any connection that's there, it's more so with relation to the story. And then, like I said, like the comics, it's just world building everything that's out there, because it's addressing things that people have asked about. Like, hey, there's no Avengers, so who's really been out here doing that, and what is the government doing about it? And that's kind of those little things that I like. And even going into the visuals and such, this movie has a very old school flavor to it. The special effects that are there works, but there's a lot of practical effects, way more than is, and it makes sense because look at the characters. They're not, other than Ghost, all of them aren't necessarily on the flashy side of like
they're not
power sets.
Their costumes actually look like they're wearing actual costumes.
They're in Black Ops, so it ain't going to be
Black Ops.
with exception of Red Guardian, obviously, because
outside of Red Guardian, but like everybody else, like for the most part, I'm like, okay, this looks like they're actually wearing a suit and not not a CG what you call it, not a green suit, if you will.
Yeah, and I think them being practical with it, especially with the action scenes, it works for this group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you had to do, because yes, there's some moments where obviously you see the special effects, like I said, with Sentry, and there are certain like key moments in the movie where it's like, well, that's CG, but it works in service of the story.
Yeah, the VFX weren't terrible this time around.
Yeah, because it, like I said, it felt very limited. It was like, hey, do we really need to be VFX heavy? No, like obviously, if you look at the budget, you see why, because there's a lot of practical effects heavily in this movie,
and I appreciated every second of it.
Yeah, and it was, and somebody said it best, even past what you say about Back to Basics. They said it had a very Phase 1 feel, like we get back to Iron Man.
It did.
How like you had the visual effects of the Iron Man suit, but like when you look at the scenes where Tony is flying around in his garage, that was actually a practical thing, so to speak. It kind of, and I think that's kind of maybe what a lot of reasonable people want out of the MCU is like, hey, look, if you're going to give me visual effects, make sure it actually is in service to what you're doing, instead of just thinking that you can just, all right, CGI and that will cover up all our, downsides of our movie. It's like, no, like, don't do that. Because at that point, now I don't care. I'm kind of, I ain't going to be checked out, but somebody else is going to be checked out your movie because the visual effects ain't really hitting the way it did. I.e., if you look at Quantumania, MODOK, it's like, I see what you're doing, but it's very, that's it. I'm just bringing up MODOK because it was more distracting than it was servicing in the plot.
It was dude, listen, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, when I saw it in the theater, and I think I almost said it out loud, but when I saw it show up, I said, woof.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
That was rough.
and I said it in that review. It's like I get what they were doing, but like when you have something that distracts you from what you're trying to do, you didn't really do as good of a job as you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And like I said, going into Thunderbolts, all the visual effects, top to bottom, worked for the plot, and you never once sit there and say, "That was shaky." It's like, no, that makes sense. It works. Cool, great. But yeah, this is definitely go to theaters and see it. We saw it in IMAX, which was actually pretty dope. I ain't gonna lie.
Definitely experienced this movie in IMAX. Some of you might probably ask the question that I was asking internally. I didn't even ask you this, but I know that when they were in New York, I was like, I have a question, but I'm like, no, this is.
Are they in New York?
No, not that. It wasn't even that. It's the fact that they were in New York, but a part of me is going, you're right there in New York. And it's the question I had was, so when the Spider-Man movie drops, is he going to even mention anything that is taking place here?
It's a possibility, I feel, because there's other projects that have mentioned stuff from Hawkeye as a good example, right?
Yeah,
like
you got something that mentioned Hawkeye, and you had Daredevil that mentioned Spider-Man.
Yeah, you have this movie that mentions stuff from the first Avengers movie.
And you had and this movie also literally mentioned Brave New World.
Yeah, Brave New World. So like the mentions that are there, it's done in subtle ways for what they're for again, the plot. It's servicing the plot. It's not just there like, oh, throw this in there for connectivity. It's like, no, this is why we're mentioning the Avengers. This is why, like you said, we're mentioning Brave New World. This is why we're mentioning Hawkeye. This because it's like, no, these, even Ant-Man to a degree, because I think Ghost brings that up with her stuff. So it's like, all right, cool, makes sense. And like I said, I had to kind of sit back on this too when it comes to Thunderbolts, in the fact that this whole thing leading up to Secret Wars and Doomsday, I feel this has been Marvel doing a lot of experimenting on what works and what doesn't. Like I say, we see because with their characters, because like I said, we bringing up Quantumania, that was definitely a very experimental film. It was like, well, what if we put Ant-Man in a different perspective? Well, lesson learned. Don't do that again.
No, it was experimental, but it was more so we're setting this up for the new big bad. And,
I know that. Yeah.
And when things, and let's just say, when life came at you fast, for certain actors, they had to go, like Marvel really had no choice but to
Hail Mary,
like go course. Like they really had no choice but to retreat, regroup, and rethink their efforts of where they're going to go for phase 5 and 6.
Well, even past that though, I'm just looking at it in terms of how they went about these movies, because you give us Multiverse of Madness, which felt very much a Sam Raimi movie, like top to bottom, like just everything. You look at Brave New World, which again, they're doing their best to like, all right, we know people weren't necessarily too hot on Eternals, but we are going to take that plot point of that Celestial popping up and actually use it in a meaningful way, instead of just like, we'll get to it in Eternals 2 and shit, which they clearly aren't going to do. So it's like, all right, fuck it, we'll do that. And it ties into what you were saying about Brave New World having 3 different plots. It's like, damn, that sucks that it had to be Falcon to have to address that, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like why him? Why?
Yeah, I mean it works, but like you said, when you add in the Hulk stuff, it's like it's a lot of plot points fighting themselves to see who can dominate.
Yeah, it's like it worked and didn't work at the same time. I was like, why him? Why did you gamble on it? Like, this is your first Anthony Mackie led movie. Like, why are you giving him this much on the plate?
Yeah, and I will say, like, I think with this film, me and Lucas talked about this. It's one of those scenarios where that segment of people that have expectations of what they expect out of big tentpole films, they might come into this being like, either A, like us, where we're genuinely surprised, like, oh, this is actually opposite of what I wanted. This is actually pretty good. And you might got some others that might be like, it ain't hitting because they didn't do what I thought they were typically going to do in these kind of films. And
well, see, for me, if there was one expectation I did have going into Thunderbolts is, I know this isn't going to be a big Avenger level film, and I was fine with that.
I'm glad they didn't market it
and I
as
was
a big
glad they
tentpole
didn't do
movie
it.
either.
I said, I was like, good. You didn't necessarily go with the three, was it the 3-stage action movie trope? You didn't go with none of the real cliche things that you see in in action films like this. Not to where it's so heavy handed. You threw some curveballs here or there, but they were good for what you were trying to tell with the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point to where even I, just like I came out of Brave New World, like, you know what? Even if I thought the movie was fine, I do want to see more adventures of Anthony Mackie's Falcon. This movie is the same, where it's like,
yeah,
and then granted, current announcements that just happened,
I'm gonna say,
we
give
know
him
because
give him a more solid story.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think because they got past this whole storyline that they're telling with this, now when you continue going forward with this team, which we know they're going to be in Doomsday with the announcement that they just made.
Yeah.
But it doesn't spoil like actually watching the movie. But like you still come out of it like, yo, I want to see more adventures, because now you can actually maybe go full tilt into that typical 3-act structure of an action movie with them now, because you got past the emotional stuff that got you sucked in. Because by the time you get to the end of the movie, you do want to see more of these characters, like, because they're like, oh, they got confidence now. Cool. So,
I agree.
But I'll definitely
all in all, I'm recommending seeing this movie when it releases.
Go see it in IMAX.
Experience it in IMAX.
We know Sinners is out of IMAX come Thursday, but definitely, Thunderbolts tagging in. Like, hey, come see us too.
But yeah, check the movie out. It's worth a watch.
Yep. So yeah, with that in mind, we will catch you guys later. Peace.
That boy is Benny Hanna.